Hello and welcome to Blythswood Banat podcast episode 27. Today it's a special episode because it's the first one in English. I hope you'll enjoy it and understand the whole episode. We have James Campbell, which is Chief Executive at Blythswood Care International in Scotland. With him, we talk about the beginning of Blythswood Care, and also the beginning of Blythswood Banat, which is located in Gimbolia. It's an interesting episode. Hope that you enjoy it, and don't forget to like and follow our partners, which we thank a lot, and also to visit our Patreon page where you can access one of the free offers that we offer. It's a play on us, but no problem. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And till the next episode. James, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for making time to visit us on your short visit to Romania. If you can please tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, sure. I'm James Campbell. I was born in 1957, and next month I will be 66. Married to Liz for 40 years. We have 5 children, 2 sons and 3 daughters. My eldest son is a lawyer. He's be 39 this year. My second son, Mike, that's JP. My second son, Mike, is a police officer in Scotland, and he will be 37 this year. My eldest daughter, Emma, she's a pediatric nurse, and she'll be 35 this year. And then we have twin daughters that are almost 30. All of our youngsters are married except for Sarah, and she gets married next Friday. So that's great. And we have 5 grandchildren. My eldest son, JP, has 3 girls and a little boy just last year. And my daughter, Emma, has a little girl who's just over a year.
So you have a full house in Christmas and holidays.
It's
nice.
It's not often we all get together, but we try to on special occasions, like marriages, and it's great. It's great. We love having the family around, and we have a lot of fun together.
I think so. So what do you do right now? Where do you work?
Well, I work for Blythswood Care. I'm chief executive. I was appointed 25 years ago. Before that, I worked in the construction industry. Our family were in construction for over 100 years.
Wow.
And latterly, I managed and ran a precast concrete business, which I sold in 1997. And felt that the Lord was calling me into something. I wasn't sure what. And I then thought I could work for a number of different organizations, maybe part-time.
Okay.
But God and my wife had a different plan. And Liz saw an advert for Blythswood Care, looking for a chief executive. And she said, I think you should apply for this. It would be good that you did something full-time rather than a few different jobs. So long story short, I applied for the job and heard nothing for quite some time. Applied for other jobs and got offered a part-time chief exec job in the timber industry. And I said to Liz that, I must give them a reply at the end of the weekend. And on, I think it was Wednesday night or Thursday night, I woke up twice through the night, and I didn't usually wake up in the night. And I said, okay, Lord, if you want me to do something else, I need to know, because I need to make a decision. And the following morning, I was walking to my room, my office, and my private line was ringing. I thought, Liz or my father are looking for me, and picked up the phone, and it was Roderick McKenzie, who was the chairman of Blythswood at the time, and he said, James, we got your application some months ago. We've been taking time to organise interviews. We really want you to come to interview. And in fact, he said, we really want you to come because we think you're ideal for the job. So I put the phone down and I said, okay, thank you, Lord. I understand what you're saying. So I was appointed in April of 98. And I have had a very interesting life through Blythswood Care. I didn't know much about Eastern Europe. I didn't know much about what we did. my first trip to Eastern Europe was with Jackie Ross, our president and founder, in June of 1998.
Okay.
And we came to Jimbolia that time as well.
Nice.
We drove from Cluj through Turgumurish down into Jimbolia, and I met Adi way back in these days, and it was a very interesting first trip to Romania. So I've worked for the last 25 years as chief executive of Blythswood Care, and we've had a very, very interesting journey, and
I think so.
It's just been wonderful to see how the Lord has worked through so many different people and so many different projects.
Yeah, congratulations on what you do. And for the people that don't know exactly Blythswood Care, what is the main purpose of Blythswood?
Okay, well, Blythswood was founded in 1966.
Okay.
Jackie Ross was our founder, along with a couple of other student friends.
Okay.
He was a divinity student in Glasgow. And somebody came to him one Sunday and said, it's all very well you preaching to people every Sunday, but what are you doing for people in the need in the streets of Glasgow? And it really touched his heart, and he really felt that he needed to do something practical to help those that were struggling. So he approached the church, and they agreed that they would set up the Blythswood Tract Society.
Okay.
So they started reaching out to people in the streets, giving them gospel tracts, but also giving them practical help like food and clothing and things that would help them in their day-to-day existence. And that was the start of the Blythswood Care ministry, or the Blythswood ministry through the Blythswood Tract Society. Jackie then went to Loch Carron, which is a village on the west coast of Scotland, and that's where his ministry was after he graduated. And from there, he continued to send literature around the UK, but also abroad. And the ministry grew and developed. And on occasions, he and his family would take trips into Europe, into Albania, into Yugoslavia as it was then, and also into Romania. And sometimes they would smuggle Bibles in, and they met some pastors in these countries. So when the revolution happened in the late 80s, early 90s, Jackie was well placed to reach out and to start sending relief aid into Eastern Europe, and to Romania in particular. And I think at that time he tried to commandeer every vehicle he could get hold of, and he filled it with clothing and with food and with all sorts of different supplies. And the ministry then changed from being just a tract society into more or less a humanitarian aid organization. So throughout the 90s, we sent many, many loads into Eastern Europe. I think at the peak of what we were doing, we sent up to 120 Arctic loads in 1 year. So it became a very big organization in terms of gathering in donations from so many people around the UK, and we were trying to reach out to help those that at that time were in great need here in Eastern Europe. And even in 98, when I first came out, I could see there was still a lot of need for the country, and we continued to send quite a bit of aid right through the 90s.
Okay.
So Jackie, at that first visit, also showed me a building that he had managed to purchase through the support of some of our friends in Scotland. And I said to him, so what is this building for? He said, I don't know, but we believe that we should be building a project here. And this was the Daniel Centre in Florești, just outside of Cluj.
Okay.
And he had really no idea as to what we were going to do, but through consultation, through different discussions, they decided that the greatest need at that time was to help young men who had been brought up in institutions to try and rehabilitate them.
Yeah.
And from about 18...
I think it's difficult, yeah. Okay.
From perhaps 18 to about 22. So a lot of different folks helped us to formulate what the project would look like in these days. And so our first project was started in 2000. The Daniel Centre was opened. And at that time, Jackie himself was our founder, wasn't particularly well. He had cancer, and so we were able, fortunately, to fly him out to the opening of the Daniel Center.
So he saw it, yeah.
He saw the first project, which was wonderful. But at that same time, we were in discussions with Adi Papa, and he had a real heart to see poor people from the community here helped with their homework and with an after-school program. And again, he was wondering where we would start that in Jambolia. And this building where TK1 is became available, and we bought that and then started to refurbish it. And that project opened in 2001.
So we have 20 plus years of Blythswood Banat.
Exactly, in Blythswood Banat. And that was the start of Adi's vision for this area and for this community.
Yeah.
So over time, we have moved from being a relief aid organisation in the 90s into a project-driven organisation. And we have many projects here in Romania, but also in other parts of Eastern Europe that either we support or we help get started, and then they get run by our friends and our partners in different parts of Eastern Europe. And also in India, we responded to the disaster of the tsunami in the early part of 2005, and we went out and met a number of people there, and we got involved with a number of Indian projects. And we've also had connections with Africa. Okay. We were sending a correspondence course back from the early days of Blythswood Tract Society to Nigeria. And we had a correspondence course called Let's Study Mark, the Gospel of Mark, and Acts. And people would be sent this correspondence course, they would fill it in, and when it came back to Scotland, it was marked by lots of volunteer teachers and others. And then we would send them a Bible and other literature, and many people in Nigeria came to faith with that, or grew in their faith, and went on to serve the Lord through that ministry. We've also worked in Burundi.
Okay.
I came to meet a good friend called Samuel Nimubona. He had come to England, to London, for a Tear Fund course, and he had heard somehow or another we had sent a container of aid support to Rwanda, and he phoned up and he said, I'd love you to come and meet you. And I said, where are you? He said, I'm in London. And he said, where are you? I said, well, I'm in the north of Scotland. So he took the train up to Inverness, and I just really clicked with him when I met him. He had a real heart for peace and reconciliation within Burundi and Rwanda. And this was just following the genocide in that country. And he was very keen that we would help and support, and so we agreed to send him a container load of aid, including an ambulance and medical equipment and medical supplies.
Very useful,
And it was very useful to them. And so our relationship grew over a couple of years. And very sadly, he was assassinated at the end of 2002. And it was tragic, because every time I spoke to him, it was like a bright sunshine came into my day. And
he was very positive.
He was a lovely, lovely man who had a real heart for people and seeing people transformed and seeing people, having reconciliation between the Tutsis and the Hutus. And he had all sorts of different events, and he had set up a radio station that broadcast lovely stories and testimonies around the country, and many people came to understand the love of Jesus through that. So when he passed away, Delphine had phoned me to tell me that this had happened, and I couldn't go to the funeral because it was so quick, but in their culture, after a year, they have a memorial service, so I went out and I met with Delphine. And then two of their colleagues, Charles and John, came to International Christian College in Glasgow to study, and which we sponsored. And they went back to Burundi, and we supported their work ministry, and they're working there and to this day. But we still work with Delphine, with World Outreach Initiatives, the initiative that Samuel had set up. And in fact, she married his brother, Christian, and they've also got children. So we continue to support that radio station ministry in Burundi to this day. And it's so these sort of connections were the way that the organization grew and developed, and it was wonderful.
So you help people all around the world, actually.
Yes, in different parts, yeah. Even in Zimbabwe, and
And you told me that Blythswood is like, the logo of Blythswood has 3 areas.
Yeah.
And those 3 areas are, maybe you can talk about.
Yeah, we have narrowed down our vision.
Okay.
Our vision is to see lives transformed through Christian care.
Okay.
Our mission is to basically to see to create educational opportunities, community action, and also gospel outreach. So ECG, education, community, and gospel. The very heartbeat of what we do is that ECG is our main focus. So all of our projects and those we work with will have one, if not all, of these aspects to their ministry. And we want to see young people, particularly in deprived areas, being given the opportunity to come out of the cycle of poverty by being educated, by being helped and supported in their early years, and sometimes even in their older years, because it's such a help for people to be able to read and to write and to communicate and to understand the love of Jesus as well. And we've seen many people's lives completely transformed, and it's such a joy to do that. So
yeah, I think so. And I also was thinking sometimes, like, a lot of cities and towns and like small communities in Romania, and not only Romania, would need something like Blythswood, like for especially for underprivileged children, because they are everywhere, and not all communities are as lucky as Jimbolia to have like Blythswood Banat, where children can go and learn and try to people there try to educate them. Also offer them a plate of food. Well,
I think both aspects are important. To be able to learn, you also need to have nourishment in your body. And we feel it's very important when the youngsters come that they get a good square meal.
You cannot learn on an empty stomach.
No, that's right. And we've been so privileged to be able to work with so many different partners who have got a real heart to see people's lives turned around, changed, transformed, with education, but also with understanding that Jesus loves them for who they are, for where they are, regardless of their race or their colour or their background. And it's just such an encouragement to see lives changed, and to see people being able to grow and to look after themselves, to have the dignity of working, to have the opportunity to see that they are of worth and they can do something for themselves, not just to continue to receive handouts. And that's in a sense why we changed from being a relief aid organisation to community and project-driven organisations, so that people could help themselves rather than being receiving.
Yeah, it's like that lesson that Jesus gave, that you should teach people to fish, not to give them.
That's correct.
To eat fish.
It's the same principle, and there is so much to be gained from that, because people, as I say, get so much more dignity out of being able to do something for themselves rather than feel that they are, a case that needs charity all the time.
Exactly. Plus, I think if somebody through Blythswood gets on his feet, I think he or she will also tend to give back also.
Yeah, and that's been a great privilege, where we've We've had youngsters that have come through some of our programs who are now wanting to help those that are coming behind them and coming, and that has happened so often. And it's a privilege for us to see young people have a desire to serve
beautiful.
and to work. Some of the school teams that come over to summer camps here in Eastern Europe also go on to serve in different ways. Many of them have been inspired to become teachers because of the experience that they've had, and that to us is a great joy as well. And they become long-term supporters of Blythswood because they enjoy and appreciate what has been done and what we're trying to do to help those to help themselves. So it's a really exciting ministry. I didn't know a lot about Eastern Europe when I joined Blythswood. I had no idea really where Romania was, and we have reached out into so many of the Eastern European countries like Moldova and Bulgaria, Serbia. We've got Blythswood in Serbia as well, Blythswood in Banat, and in Albania and Hungary, and many other countries around here, and of course nowadays in Ukraine. We've been working in Ukraine. We have an annual shoebox appeal, and we gather about anything from 80,000 to 100,000 shoeboxes around the UK, and we send them to 7 or 8 or 9 countries each Christmas time.
Nishimbolia also, I think, has a lot of shoe boxes coming in
that's right.
Christmas time.
And it's and that's always been a great blessing. And we had a partner in Ukraine, Tanya, that we always sent boxes to. And of course, since the war, we've been doing so much more in Ukraine because it's really on our doorstep. And we have been able, because of all the contacts that we have in Eastern Europe, we've been able to help and support either refugees coming out of Ukraine or internally displaced people within Ukraine. And that's been a great privilege. But it's so sad to see that country being decimated by this unnecessary war, really.
I think we should be past wars by now. It's I don't know. I was thinking, as a young teenager or whatever, I will never see war again. Yeah. But
sadly, Scripture says there will always be wars, rumors of wars, and disasters around the world, and that often makes us question, why is this happening? But there is always a purpose, and there's always a reason. Even through this tragic war in Ukraine, the gospel is going out, and there are people now hearing the gospel that would never have heard it before then. And that has been, again, an encouragement to us. We're working with some pastors that have been working in Ukraine for many years, and one of them said to me the other day, we have never had this opportunity since the 90s. Our churches have never been so full as they are now. People who have lost everything are coming to seek the Lord in their need, and it's just extraordinary to see that God works even through tragic circumstances to lead people to Himself, to understand that there is more to life than what we have in our possessions or whatever. But the only constant is Jesus. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And it is incredible to see that when everything else goes, we can still have something to hold on to, something to have faith and trust in. And He is our constant. And I think that, for me, is the privilege that we've had within this organisation, to be able to share that gospel message of hope and of salvation, and something that people can grasp hold of, that they can never find that they lose, and it's encouraging. It's encouraging.
Okay. So maybe we can talk also a little bit about Blythswood Banat.
Yeah.
So Blythswood was founded in 2001.
Yeah.
So we have like 22 years, 23 almost, of Blythswood Banat in Jimbolia. How was the beginning of Blythswood Banat?
As I said, my first trip to Romania in '98, we met with Adi. Adi had been in university in Wales with Philip Ross, who was our founder's son.
Oh, okay.
So that connection was made. So Jackie, I think, was very keen for me to meet with Addie and Rita. And we came down here and we spent a couple of days with them. He shared his vision at that time. He had just really, I think, been back in Romania for a fairly short time. I think he was connected with the Baptist Church. And initially his idea was to build an after-school program at the back of the church and to try and work through that. But things didn't work out exactly like that, and he identified a building where Tilitikum 1 is now, and he approached us and said, do you think we could raise the funds to purchase this building? And we were able to do that, and then little by little we got the funding to rehabilitate that building. And over a period of time, it got pulled together. Through the generosity of our supporters, we were able to build that to the specification that he had. And he also had other ideas about how to make the project self-sustaining. So he, at the same time, looked at, I think we had a wee pottery, a pottery studio at the back of Tilitikum. He opened a shop, and we were sending charity shop, and we were sending goods for him to sell through there, and that work began to develop well after we opened with the. I think it was the first few years of primary school that he was wanting to help some of the most underprivileged youngsters in the community that he was getting to know and to reach out to. And it was just lovely to see the canteen full of youngsters coming in and having a meal, then going off to learn more about their schoolwork and to help with their homework.
Exactly.
And other skills like music and dance and different skills that they were given by the teachers who were giving of their time and being so dedicated. And it was just lovely to see these youngsters being able to go from grade to grade and finish each grade and go on to the next one, which simply wasn't happening with some of them because of, some of their parents were not able to help them with their homework. They're a bit dysfunctional, maybe had addictions, maybe they were out of work, they weren't educated themselves. So that made it difficult for them. And with the support that Tilitikum, which means Little Child Rise Up, was giving, it was just super to see so many youngsters develop. And over time, Addie's vision kept growing and developing. And he felt that the first part of primary school was great, but we needed to, as these youngsters grew and graduated from each grade in school, they
also need TK2.
They needed TK2 and for the junior secondary school age group. And so at that time we thought, how could we build another building? And Addie said, well, there are European grants becoming available. So he applied for a European grant, and between the Romanian government and the European grant, we purchased, or in fact, we were able with friends to purchase the TK2 building, but to refurbish it, to make it into...
It was difficult, yeah.
It was very difficult. It's a big building. Yeah. So this grant that we got enabled us to do that, and it was extremely hard work for Addie. I mean, he's very talented, as you know, but I think it did certainly test him. But we were able, because of that, to not only refurbish it, but to equip it with great equipment. And then he appointed different teachers and those to help and support from the community here. And it was great to see the partnership also between the Jumbolia School and Tilitikum, and that was a great partnership because I think the teachers could see the benefit of the after-school program, helping the youngsters that were in their school classes to develop and to grow.
I think it works perfect if the school collaborates with Blythswood. It will be perfect.
Yeah, and that collaboration has been excellent, and it was great to see that continue to develop. We have friends that were in Budapest, a group called Suits on Bikes.
Suits on Bikes.
And they originally, they literally got on their bikes, and I started to join them after a few years. And they would cycle 200 or 300 kilometres over 2 or 3 days to raise funds for the Talitacum work. And these guys have been a huge support. It was started really through a friend of mine who was my best man, Ken Mackenzie. He was the Church of Scotland minister in Budapest. And of course, because of that, he was meeting people at the highest echelons of Budapest society, right down to refugees that were coming into Hungary at the time. But in one of these meetings with some of the people that were heads of fairly big corporations, he came up with this idea, or in fact he was asked, we should be doing something for some of the poorer people in Eastern Europe. And he said, well, I've got friends, Blythswood Care in Romania, why don't we visit some of their projects? And these guys came and were inspired, and so they started literally raising money through their colleagues and through their corporations to try and support the work that's been going on here for maybe 15 years or so. They've been doing this, and
nice.
Next month I'm meeting them for the final time because most of them have moved away from Budapest now,
okay.
And we're meeting just to have a final cycle to raise funds. But that work has also gone on through Stow School. Alistair McLeish has a connection with Stow School in England.
Stow School is the school that visited Jimbolia recently.
Correct, yeah, okay. Yeah. And they've got a relationship with Talitacum, but also with the school here. And they're trying to do a collaboration both ways. So some of the teachers are going to Stow, and some of the Stow teachers and pupils are coming here.
Very nice.
And working. And it's a lovely partnership.
Yeah.
And we want to see that develop, and because it's of benefit to the teachers here, but also because they can learn things from both sides, which is great. And it's just so encouraging to see that the work here in Blythswood Banat is growing and developing. We are very grateful to the community who support our shops and buy our products, which of course in the end also supports the programme. And we would like to see that grow and develop more. We would like to see the older age group of graduates, alumni from Talitacum 2, being able to do other study in later parts of school, or indeed in apprenticeships or something else, so that not only are they educated, but we're encouraging them into work, so that they're giving something back to the community as well. And I've been so encouraged to see some of the youngsters who have come through the programme testifying to how the programme has helped them to be able to work now, to support their families, to support those that are with them. And to us, that's just such a wonderful blessing. And it's great to see.
Some of them even come back and become volunteers at Blythswood Banat.
Yeah, and that's such an encouragement as well. And they're seeing that there is value in helping and supporting young people who have not been given the opportunity for whatever reason. And there's no judgment. There's just a desire to see these youngsters grow and develop and give something back, as I say,
exactly.
to their families, but to the community, and to see things grow. So it's encouraging.
Just a microphone a little. So do you think it will maybe someday be a ticket free for high school people?
We hope so.
Okay.
We hope so. We did apply for some grant support, which was given, but we also trying to get some human capital support for the ongoing running costs. That didn't come through this time, but we will continue to do that. I would like to think that we can even start it in a small way and then grow it and develop it later.
Sure.
So, we're not finished with what we would like to do and would like to see happen in the days ahead. And we really appreciate the fact that Andy and Rita have given so much, and Carmen and other members, Lydia and others that have been so dedicated to the work. And it's good to see that the younger generation are coming behind Andy and Rita, because none of us are getting any younger. But it's to see that work can continue, because it's of great value. And and I do think there's a great future for it. And a lot of our supporters really value the work. They like to see the outcomes. It's all very well supporting something, but if you actually see real and true outcomes, it's hugely beneficial to see young people flourishing and developing and growing and being given the opportunity to do something for themselves. So, yeah, we're certainly keen to see things continue to move on.
I also found it interesting how the free areas that Blythswood Care is activating in is like from the beginning of Blythswood, and now in the present, like ministers and other associations talk about one or two or all three of these areas, but you started it from the beginning. You know from the start where people need help. And that's very interesting.
Yes, I think that was Jackie's original vision, and
it's a clear and good vision, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's important to help people at their point of need, not just to try and preach at them, but actually what do they need? What is their daily need? Whether it's food, whether it's clothing, whether it's accommodation, whether it's housing. And there are all sorts of practical needs. And I think this holistic ministry is very powerful, because in some ways, if you help them at their point of need, you earn the right to be able to share the love of Jesus. And you're sharing that love of Jesus in a practical way. Jesus himself, when he was on earth, helped people. He healed people. He fed people in the course of his ministry. And I think that practical demonstration of the love of Jesus is an important aspect of our work, and we certainly feel that it's important to meet the needs of those that are struggling. Back in Scotland, we have food banks. We give food to those that fall into crisis, and anybody can fall into crisis. All of a sudden, you could be in employment and lose employment. A relationship could break down. And it means that you may not have what it's you got to buy food for your family. So we have we develop a 3-day food supply, and that was an interesting journey as well. For a number of years, we were sending trainloads, and I literally mean trainloads of food to Sofia in Bulgaria through an organization called Mission East.
Okay.
And they were based in Denmark. And one of the guys who worked there in Sofia was Paddy Henderson, and Paddy was from Salisbury in England. And he also was raising funds for some of the work that was going on in Bulgaria and Sofia. But one day a lady came up to him, quite similar to Jackie's experience, and she said, "It's all very well you raising money for all these kids in Eastern Europe. I can't put food on the table for my child here in Salisbury." And he thought, this is crazy. I mean, how is that the case? And because Salisbury's quite a prosperous English town, city, and but within every city there are those that are struggling. And it really touched him, and he thought, what can we do? And he said, but our social system in the UK should be able to cope with that. And he realised that there was a gap between somebody falling into crisis today and social services kicking in, which might be a week or 10 days or more.
Yeah, it makes a difference.
Yeah, so he started saying to the local authority, you're not able to respond to people's need very quickly. And of course, they were a little taken aback. But through time, he was able to persuade them that if he supplied food to meet that gap, it was better than them either struggling with food or struggling with support. So that started what was the Trussell Trust, which is another organisation. And Blythswood and Trussell Trust had a partnership way back. I think we funded his first administrator and were able to raise funds for his first van. And they set up the first food bank in Salisbury. And I think the second food bank was the Highland Food Bank. And now there are something like 400 or 500 food banks around the UK. And
nice.
But that's been a great development. And again, We want to find ways of resolving that, but it's very difficult. People fall into crisis for all sorts of different reasons, so that happens in the UK as well as in Eastern Europe and other
every
countries.
country, I think.
So every country's got some points of need and got areas that need to be addressed, and it's our privilege to be able to do that in different ways. So,
how do you see Romania from the first time you visit?
Yeah.
And now, maybe.
Well,
Do you see progress?
Huge progress. It's very, very different. It was always quite a challenge traveling around Romania in the late 90s and early 2000. The infrastructure was very poor. The roads were extremely precarious. There was lots of massive potholes that you had to dodge, and you couldn't drive particularly fast. Yes, you could lose your car in them. But it was tough. It was difficult. There was much greater obvious poverty in these days. I mean, 25 years on for me, the difference is in places like Cluj, even Florești.
Okay.
Florești had a very small population when we first opened the Daniel Centre. Now there's thousands of houses around the Daniel Centre. It's huge, and in fact, it's just a suburb of Cluj now, and it's a big suburb of Cluj, and it's connected. There was a bit of a gap between Cluj and Florești, but not nowadays. Yeah. And the development in cities like Cluj, like Timișoara, like Bucharest, and many others besides is incredible. I mean, Cluj now has what would be called a Silicon Valley. I mean, there are so much IT and tech companies now working out of Cluj. It has given an opportunity for the younger generation within Romania, I would say an emerging middle class in Romania, because there are opportunities for growth and development, for work, for well-paid work, which was not the case when I first came here. People were really struggling to find work. If they had work, it was very, very poorly paid. So we've seen huge, or at least I've seen huge change over these 25 years. Don't get me wrong, I think there's still a huge need within the country. And in some ways, some would say to me the poor are even poorer now in relative terms. But I think the opportunity is there. And I think this whole, if you like, vision of trying to educate people gives them the opportunity to find work. As you know, many Eastern Europeans who were educated went west and worked in the UK and worked in Germany and Spain and France and other countries, and that still happens. I know by the fact that the flights are very busy, that there's a lot of traffic of people back and forth. And that's another area. We used to, when I first came here, we used to be only able to fly into to Budapest, sometimes to Bucharest, through Lufthansa or KLM. Wizz Air didn't exist in these days, and EasyJet was only just beginning in our country. But now we can fly directly from Luton to almost any to Cluj, to Iași, to Timișoara, to Bucharest, to Budapest, and even into Bulgaria to right on to the Black Sea, and many other countries. In fact, we can fly to Belgrade in Serbia with Wizz Air and others, and there's just so much more connectivity, and it's so much cheaper as well. It's a lot cheaper for us to fly because Wizz Air is, as you know, a low-cost airline that has enabled Romanians to travel as well as others to travel into Eastern Europe. So it's this huge change, and I think all mostly positive change. There's always with development things that you prefer not to see, but on the whole, it's been really, really encouraging to see the development of the country over time.
Okay. I think with the development of the country, you also see development in small cities like Jimbolia, and also the Blythswood Banat. I think it's grown from one building to 2 buildings, 3 buildings, TK2, TK3 maybe soon. Yeah. So it's nice that everything is growing.
Yeah, yes it is. And I think I'm encouraged by the younger generation within Romania. I think they're very much more optimistic. They recognize that they can do things for themselves and that the opportunities are there. And
Exactly.
There's quite a lot of entrepreneurs, I would say, in Romania. There's a lot of people who are well educated. I mean, the education system has always been good. The arts and music were always superb way back, even in communist days. And you could see that there was that great ability within people who were given opportunity. So I would be very optimistic for the country's future, for the development of young people. That they need to grasp hold of the fact that they can do what they dream about, and it is possible to realize your dreams. You just have to work at it.
Yeah.
It doesn't get handed to you on a plate. You need to go and do something for yourself. Start and
small steps.
Small steps, little by little. I mean, even Blythswood's development, small steps, step by step. It's been amazing, and even throughout the pandemic. I mean, we were very concerned when the pandemic hit. How would we survive? How would we be able to cope? And how would we get through all of this when all of a sudden we were all locked down and we couldn't do anything, we couldn't generate income? But the support that we got from our supporters through that time, and through our government. Paying furlough money to our staff was such a blessing, and I would say we came out of lockdown even stronger than we went into it. And there's been, we are blessed by receiving legacies from those who pass away and from other things, and it's been extraordinary. We just thought things were beginning to turn back to normal beginning of last year when the Ukraine war hit. And again, we were kind of reeled at the back of that and thought, dear, how can we respond to this? And we put out an emergency appeal about this time last year, and it was an enormous response to that. And we were enabled to support those that are partnering with us in Romania, in Moldova, in Hungary, and within Ukraine itself. And we've been able to give financial support to them to buy food, to help with accommodation, to help with transport, and to help with medical supplies to the people who have been fleeing that country. So it's amazing how faithful our Lord has been, who goes before us, provides for us even before we know it. And I'm just so encouraged that regardless of how we may feel we are weak and how we can't provide, the Lord has already provided and is already sending support for things. And I could testify to so many times that we've wondered how could we build Tiliticum, and yet then the money would come in just when we needed it and just when it was required. And I remember Vasily Pop in Dej. He's also a visionary, a bit like Adi, who's always wanting to push on, and he wanted to build a kindergarten in Dej. And Jackie and I had discussed with him his plans, his vision, and we said, well, we would try and support if we could. And anyway, he phoned me up one day and he said, James, he said, we've found a plot, and we'd like to buy it, and I said to him, when is it going to be? Oh, he said, we need to get it now. And I said, how much is it? And he said, it's I think it was 40,000 Deutschmarks.
Okay.
And I said, really? And that's extraordinary. He said, how's that? He said, well, we received 40,000 Deutschmarks the other day and we didn't know what it was for. And of course, we didn't deal in Deutschmarks.
Perfect, yeah.
And so these sort of things happen to us time and time again, how the Lord has provided before we knew what it was for. And it's wonderful to know that we have that.
It comes
support.
to mind now a quote that, like this coincidence was God's way to remain anonymous.
Yeah.
That's a quote. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's extraordinary, and He knows better than we do what is needed, and all we have to do is to reach out in faith and
Exactly.
trust, and it's been an extraordinary journey. I mean, we have lived entirely by faith in the organisation. We've got very, very loyal supporters who have helped us in so many different ways. And as I say, the need is often met. So as long as we understand what the Lord's will is and understand what He's got in plan for us, He provides. And I think that's a great comfort, because it can be quite challenging at times running an organisation that is dependent on the support of others and is dependent on what the Lord would have us do. So
yeah. But I have maybe you can help. You have a lot of experience, and maybe you can give a piece of advice to people that are watching us for their careers or for their journey in the entrepreneur side of things. Like some general advice, what should they do to
I think
carry on?
Dream dreams and believe that you can do almost anything if you really go for it.
Okay.
And it's important to recognize that, with the Lord all things are possible. And I would never have ever seen myself doing this. I was brought up in a Christian home. I had the privilege of doing that, but I had to come to faith for myself. I had to understand that God loves me, not because of who I am, but because He loves me. And I had to understand that I needed to trust Him for every day. My father-in-law shared a lovely thing with me the other day. He said, we can theorize about Scripture, we can study Scripture, and we can look at it in so many different ways, but it's very, very simple. He said, James. He said, the publican, when he went to the temple, he cried out, "Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner." And he said he was the guy who went down to his home justified. He was the guy who went down understanding that he was forgiven. And he said, we just have to shout out for mercy. And until we understand that Jesus loves us and He saved us and will have mercy on us despite what we've done, despite our past, despite our wrongdoing, if we cry out for mercy, He will have mercy. And that's the simplicity of the gospel. We actually don't need anything else. We just need to trust that Jesus can forgive us, that He welcomes us. Like the prodigal, his father looked out for him and saw him a long way off and ran to him and saved, and welcomed him. And that's what God is wanting for all of us. He wants to welcome us. He wants to love us. He wants to forgive us. And if we have that as our basics, I think the Lord is able to use us to reach out, to do what we want to do, to dream dreams and to realize it and understand with God all things are possible. We have our own limitations. We have huge limitations personally, but with God all things are possible. So I would say to anybody, what do they want for the future? The first thing is come to know and to love Jesus. He will help you at your point of need, whatever it is. And we all have needs. We all have times of crisis. We all have difficulties to face. But if we have trust in Jesus, we can know that He will be with us and help us and support us and do in and through us far more than we could ask or ever imagine. I started in this organisation. I had really no idea what I could do or what I could offer. But I know some of the things I learned in my construction life, in my previous life, helped me in terms of whether it's building programs within our projects or whether it's understanding a bit about business or whatever it happens to be. What we learn, everything we learn is of value and of use in our further life. And some of the skills we learned that we might think, well, what is this? It may be useless, can be of use to the Lord in some way. And so the first thing is trust Him, understand that He will have mercy if we call out to Him, and know that our ultimate hope is that we'll spend eternity with Him. that's something I think we don't always look towards. I certainly don't do that enough and understand what our purpose is. But our purpose is to glorify God and then to enjoy Him throughout eternity forever. And that's such a privilege. It's such a blessing. And I'm very grateful for my upbringing, and I'm very grateful for those who have mentored me, for those who have encouraged me, for those who have supported me in my faith journey, but also in my work life, in all of what we're doing. And it's a privilege. It's such a privilege to be able to serve the Lord day by day. Not in our own strength, but in the strength that He gives and is able to do for us. So, thank you.
Beautiful. Okay, thank you, James. Maybe we can leave a little info about Blythswood if somebody watches this podcast and they want to maybe talk about a partnership or something with Blythswood. Where can they text or email?
They can always email info@blythswood.org. Look at our website.
Okay.
We are privileged to have many people working for us that have got great skills, different skills, and it's wonderful when people see or are inspired by the work that we do. We've got great staff at home and abroad. Those that are working on our projects are so dedicated to the work they're doing. I know that Addy's always looking for teachers. He's always looking for those that are able to give some of their time to support the work here in Banat. But that's true in all of our projects. And I think many of our staff have been supported, encouraged and motivated by seeing young people and sometimes older people coming to help themselves and to be educated, to work within the community, to make the community a better place. I know the community here has benefited from the work of Tulitakum, of Addy, Rita, Carmen, Lydia and others that have dedicated their life to helping young people to see their value, to see that there is something they can do. And it's great when people get inspired by that. And we certainly are always looking for folks that can help us in our mission to reach out and to see lives transformed. So look at our website. Okay. And keep in touch with us, because it's been a privilege for me. I'm maybe getting towards the retirement age, but I'll always have a heart for the work of Blythswood and the work that was the vision of our founder, Jackie Ross, all these years ago. And it's incredible that these small seeds and beginnings have grown into an organisation that is reaching out to so many countries now and to helping people at their point of need, wherever it may arise. So we don't know what the future holds, but one thing I do know is that Lord knows, and all we have to do is be open and faithful, and
exactly.
Trust that He will use us despite our weaknesses sometimes, and despite our failures. He can still use us, and people are being changed, and lives are being transformed, and hopefully he's getting the glory and He's getting the honor, because it's down to Him alone. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Thank you very much for the time and the information that you shared with us right here, right now.
It's been my privilege. Thank you for the time too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching this episode, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.